Hello, everyone. On today's video, we're going to be talking with Keytron Evans, the VP of Portfolio Product and AI Strategy right here at Infosec. If you watched our channel in the past, chances are you've seen him in a number of videos. And this one, he's going to share some of his story about how he's stayed relevant as a cyber professional over these past 20 years. And we're going to dive deep into some of these concepts, like cloud security and AI. He's got a lot of great stories about how he's been at the forefront of AI and how it's going to change potentially your roles in the coming years here. So really think it's going to be a great episode. Excited for you all to check it out. But before we dive into the conversation with Keytron, I want to mention one thing. Our team is currently working on our calendar for the coming year. One thing we want to do more of this year is do these live workshops where you can actually come with folks like Keytron and our other instructors and learn skills yourself. So we're doing our first live workshop of the year. It's our live ethical hacking workshop. Learn how to hack and use AI. That's coming up very soon, January 29th at noon Central. So in this workshop, what you're going to do is you're going to hack a system together with step-by-step guidance from Keytron. Then you're going to learn how to cover your tracks and hide that intrusion. And then finally, you're going to use AI to find proof of this attack that you just carried out, even though you tried to cover your tracks. So it's going to give you a great introduction to hacking and a great introduction to AI. Hopefully, it's going to be a ton of fun. You're going to do all that in less than an hour. And this will be a great preview also if you're considering taking an ethical hacking bootcamp with us. As Keytron mentions on this upcoming conversation, he's taught ethical hacking bootcamps going back 20 years. So great person to learn from. So encourage you all to check out the link. I will put it in the description and pin it as the top comment. Make sure you sign up if you're interested. There are limited spots available for the live session. But if you're watching this after January 29th, we will record it. So if you still go to that same forum, we will have an on-demand version that you can check out. You'll be able to watch along with Keytron and you'll be able to participate in that hack and use those AI tools and things like that as well. So really excited about that. Would love to know what other workshops you'd like to do. We're going to be planning these, every couple months throughout the year. So really hope to provide some value to you and teach you all these cool skills that Keytron talks about on today's video. So with that, let's dive into how to stay relevant as a cyber professional.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you for everybody that took time out of your schedule to be here and talk with us today and hear what we have to say. So I really appreciate that. So, one of the things that I think people underestimate sometimes is just how fast things can change in a evolving market like cybersecurity. And this is one of the few industries where the evolution and a lot of the market is driven by criminals, right? It's driven by the criminal enterprise. When you look at how quickly we have to evolve with cybersecurity skills, cybersecurity techniques, and cybersecurity products, it's mostly driven by the rapid evolution of the criminal enterprise, the malicious hackers, the bad people that are actually out doing these things. Because once we come up with a solution, it's not very long before these very skilled hackers have engineered a way around whatever that solution or that control is. So that is the biggest driver for how often we have to evolve things in cybersecurity. So understanding the root of why there is constant evolution, I think is the most important part and the first piece of understanding how you can stay ahead. So if you want to stay ahead, one big thing is making sure you keep your ear to the ground on what's evolving attack wise. Now, for me, that's easy because I started my career in cybersecurity in the world of pen testing and exploit development and that type. So for me, keeping my ear to the ground as far as what's happening in the world of attacks, what new exploits are out, that's a natural fit for me. But for some of you, you need to make a conscious effort, no matter what your role is in cyber. You could be a blue team operator, you could be a SOC analyst, you could be a policy person. It is very important for you to keep some ear to the ground, have some knowledge of what the evolving attacks are, what the new attack methods are, and things like that, even at a high level, because that's how you stay ahead of what's coming on the defense side, right? It's imperative to adapt. You must continuously adjust and enhance your skill set to remain competitive. Now, I'll give you an example. A lot of you, probably some of you that's on this call, know me from taking maybe an ethical hacking or maybe a malware in reverse engineering course or a threat hunting course that I taught, because not that long ago, I was the primary instructor for Infosec for those type of courses. And one of the things that I used to say at the end of every single cybersecurity course was, look, if you don't marry the skills that you're learning and the things that I'm teaching you in this course, if you don't marry that to cloud technology, in the next 5 years, your skill set may be obsolete. And now we can see that that revolution started to happen, to where a lot of job descriptions are now having cloud in front of what used to be, for example, network engineer. Now it's cloud network engineer. Security architect. Now it's cloud security architect. That's some of the most in demand job roles. So being able to adapt to that, taking whatever your current skill set is and taking that and building around it with things that are relevant in today's market is the most important way to make yourself relevant. Because I don't condone for everyone. For some people, I do condone this, but not for everyone do I condone starting over from scratch. If there's an avenue, it's vitally important to take the skills that you already have, to take the things that you've already mastered and build cybersecurity and build AI and build cloud around that knowledge that you already have. I was speaking to an individual at like I guess you could say a gathering, a party, barbecue, that type thing. And her background is in supply chain. She's an expert in supply chain, economics and supply chain logistics. And she was like, well, yeah, I want to change my career and I want to get into cybersecurity. And, you know, I'm cautiously approaching you because everybody here says you're known for that, but I don't want to like take your private time, personal time here to talk about work stuff. And I'm always open to that. So I was like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Let's sit down and talk about it. And she described to me that she did this supply chain thing for the government and, she does logistics, and she wanted to start all the way over and go and, you know, try to get a role as a SOC analyst or something like that. And I was like, well, I happen to know of two government agencies that are looking for people that have supply chain background, that have some basic cybersecurity knowledge, because, one of the biggest threats facing the world right now is supply chain security. So I said, why don't you build off of your supply chain expertise? Here's a few courses that I'd recommend that you can start with to give you some basic cybersecurity knowledge and start weaving that into your supply chain background. And I think that'll get you much more lift and much more value right away than trying to start from the beginning and go into a SOC analyst. And she did that, and within 2 weeks of reaching out to those two agencies, she had a job on. So these are the kinds of things that I want to really double click into. When we say adapt, that doesn't necessarily mean starting over from scratch. Whatever your expertise is, trust me, there's value in what you have. It's more about taking that and building cyber or building cloud or building AI on top of that than it is starting over from scratch. And that's really the point I want to make sure we get across.
On next slide here, we have just a little framework. I'm always, a big fan of like how you can actually implement this stuff. You talked a little bit about, anticipating trends and continuous learning. Yes, adapting faster than others. Obviously, those are pretty general. So, I wonder if you can give some context here on, how you've done it in your career. How have you anticipated those trends and built those skills and
Yeah,
adapted?
absolutely. I'll get into some trade secret stuff here. It's like as far as uh, so so let's talk about anticipating future trends. And this is one to where I probably get the most questions about this. Like, how are you always like in front of it? I published that AI white paper with ISACA back in 2021. That was really where I dug deep into AI. That's when I started to really dig into AI, back in 2021 with that white paper, because I had to do a lot of research. I had to talk to a lot of machine learning experts. I traveled, I flew out to some places to sit down with some machine learning experts and data science experts to just talk through some things and come up with some scenarios. And part of how you do that, like, let me just share this. So we've told you for years that you should really do a lot of networking because there's job opportunities and things like that that you just won't know about if you're not networked with the right people. Another reason networking is important is because you get to have insights from a lot of different people that may be in different industries and in different job roles that can inform you on what the current state of cybersecurity is and what it's probably going to evolve into. Okay. So let me tell you what that means. I recently talked to some people that I mentored years ago that are in roles that have to do with things in the government that's not related really to cyber, at least not today. Now, I can't speak on exactly what those things are yet, but I want to show you the process of how you get there. What happens is if I'm talking to someone that's a SOC lead for, let's just say, uh, uh, an intelligence community organization, and they're telling me that, like, look, the things we're really concerned about is this. So hopefully somebody will come out with something that can do A, B, and C. And then I might be talking to somebody a week later that's in the financial sector, and they might be telling me, yeah, our concern are this, this, and that. And, if we could find a way to do this, that could help us solve our problems. I'm taking all of this information into like an internal mental database. And sometimes I write it down if it's something I wouldn't get in trouble for writing down. But what it does is it helps me formulate, okay, here are all the problems that I've heard about over the last 6 months. Here are the three common things that every person in every organization that shared with me their concerns, they all agree that these are some concerns. This is not something that I get from analyst publications. This is not something I get from white papers and things out there, because as you know, people will say things more candidly in one-on-one conversations and things like that than they would ever publish or write in a survey. So getting that insight from that individual, from those organizations directly in a private setting informs you more than just about anything that you're going to go and read about. Now, you have to be careful not to betray trust and things like that. So I don't write these things in any publications, but I use that knowledge to help me formulate, here's likely what's going to be the next big thing because everybody's concerned about this. So then when I go out to things like RSA and some of these other conferences, I can see which vendors and which integrators and which innovators are creating what. And the ones that tend to have things that most closely solve the bigger problems that I hear about are the ones that end up getting, what that is. So that's how we end up with that. And that's where we get to go with that.
Awesome. Yeah, I know you talked a little bit about this AI white paper, which we kind of outlined here. Obviously, AI is one of the big trends here. So this is sort of Keytron. I tried to put your AI journey here on one slide. So I don't know if you can talk a little bit more about how you stayed ahead on AI and some of the things you've done in the AI field.
What with AI, like the trends, one of the things that happened for me is the early talk, my very first talk on AI was at an event in Vegas. And my topic was like, look, there's a lot of hype around AI. Let's talk about some things that AI is definitely going to help us with in cybersecurity. And let's comparatively talk about some things that is absolutely not going to change at all as far as cybersecurity. Because back in like 2018, 2019, people were thinking AI is going to fix everything, right? It's going to replace every cybersecurity job. And all of this was the hype. And that conference that I spoke at, my topic was like, let's dig into the myths and figure out what's really what. And I had like 700 people in that session, which was the most that organization told me that they'd ever had in a specific session. So part of it was just my own natural curiosity as to what was going to be what. Um, So my process was like I started looking at trends. Obviously, some of the early adopters of AI technology and cybersecurity were organizations that do like SIM work and intrusion detection and things like that. Because, one of the challenges with intrusion detection, for example, is let's just look at network intrusion detection, right? A big part of that is being able to grab and look at a lot of different packets over a period of time. Our biggest challenge has always been that to store every packet that comes in and out of an organization, that becomes very intensive storage wise. So the storage limitations don't allow us to do that at the way that we'd like to do it because it's just too much storage required to do that. The other challenge is there's so much data coming in so fast that we didn't have the technology to be able to look into that data in a speedy enough time to take advantage of it. Well, what does machine learning do for us? That's exactly what machine learning was created for. And marketing really was one of the first places to take advantage of machine learning in modern times because, there was a statistic out there that of all the data that we create on the internet every day, just us being ourselves, we're only able to take advantage of like 1% of that data to inform marketing and stuff like that. With machine learning, we were able to jump from like 1% to like 20%, which was a huge jump. So that was one of the first areas of it. And looking at data problems, data aggregation and correlation and data, you know, uh, retention problems that we have with things like packets, this was a logical place for us to start in cybersecurity. So this is why you saw SIM vendors and people like that using AI before a lot of others were. But then from that, I went in, got into the things that I was most interested in. And this is an important part. When you start to look at trends and you want to dig deep into something, try to give yourself several things because some of those things are going to really interest you and some of them aren't. And it's extremely helpful that you pick the things that you're really interested in, because I'm going to say something now that's not going to be very popular and it goes against a lot of what we teach in modern times. I know you've all heard like, look, when it comes to work-life balance, at 5 o'clock, you got to cut off. Like there's no working after 5 o'clock. You have to have these boundaries. Let me explain something. For me personally, and for everybody I know that's doing what I'm doing at the level that I'm doing it at, you get ahead of the curve in the time that you put in outside of work because work is work. You have things that you have to accomplish. You have financial goals that you got to take care of your family. You got to take care of yourself. Your organization has goals and things that they're trying to do that you're a part of. So that's your primary focus. But for you developing yourself individually to get ahead of the curve, most of that time is spent outside of. I would habitually and intentionally devote 2 to 4 hours per week into just researching AI. I did that for about a year, 2 to 4 hours per week. Now, over a year's time, that becomes a lot of hours. That ends up being over 100 and something hours that you've devoted to just studying something, a new topic, and playing with it and researching it. No end goal in sight, no particular endpoint, just digging into the technology and experimenting with it. And again, this is all things I did outside of my day-to-day work responsibilities. So while I'm not kicking against the concept of work-life balance, I agree you have to have that. But you have to look at getting ahead and doing things like this as part of your extracurricular activities. And this is why it's important for me that you make your topic something that actually have a ton of interest, because then it doesn't feel like work. And it's really not. It's really you improving your knowledge and improving yourself. So after that, I got that expertise. I did the white paper. Um, I started looking at now, then I understand all of this wide variety of things of how AI is going to impact cybersecurity. I narrowed down and I did a very microscopic, deep focus on how can AI impact learning, as we are a learning and training organization. And through that exercise, we came up with lots of innovative things. Some of those are courses, and some of those are just ways that we're going to be teaching you. And also things like helping you to get yourself mapped to the right training. We have 1,700 courses in our platform, right? Like in our asynchronous training platform. We have a ton of boot camps. How do you, as a beginner, or even as someone that's an expert in something that's trying to upskill, how do you know out of those 1,700 courses, which ones you need to pick to meet whatever your learning objective? And we've got some exciting AI technology that we're coming out with in, sometime in the near future to really allow you to do that effortless to where you don't have to think about it. We have the AI that's integrated in a way that's going to do that for you. We've got several AI courses that are coming out. One of the things that's at the end there that was kind of for me like the pinnacle of my getting into the world of SME work for AI was I can talk about this now. Back in January, I was selected by Amazon to be on a team of about 20 people. About 18 of them were internal Amazon machine learning and AI experts. And about two or three of us were picked from the industry to come and help them to build this new generative AI certification that Amazon's releasing in August. So I think it's around August 15th. This new generative AI certification is coming out. I spent the first half of this year helping to create that certification. And we obviously are going to launch some training around getting you prepped for that certification. And that certification is really being created it's a foundational Gen AI cert. So it's for people that have no experience in AI, no experience in programming to get the right Python, to get the right AI knowledge, to get the right, language model and other foundation model fine tuning skills that you need to immediately land a job doing AI work in an organization. Because what's going to happen is eventually we're all not going to be using ChatGPT and some of these other things. We're going to be buying access to those models and building internal chatbots and other internal applications that's able to take advantage of those foundation models and language models without the risk of you putting your data out into that public database or into that database that's shared by others, right? Building your own internal apps, fine tuning the model information so that it adapts to what your organization needs. That is going to be the next big trend in hiring as far as AI is related, right? We might be a year or two away from that, but why would you wait until then to start prepping, right? Now is where you start to get your basic AI skills. And look, so in Infosec, I have the entire product team that reports under me. I have the entire content team that reports under me. And I've told the content team, like, look, everybody on this content team, you all need to become somewhat of SME experts on AI over the next year. Whatever training you need to get there, I will approve it. But this is what your task is. This is what one of your top priorities should be over the next year. Whatever technology it is you want to dig into, that's what you're going to need to dig into because we're going to be piping out a ton of AI centric content. And I need you all to be SMEs or a lot of you to be SMEs in that area so that I'm not the only one. I've kind of set the expectation. I've led by example. I've reached the pinnacle of this from my perspective, being on this committee and helping with the responsible AI committee stuff. So now I need everybody else to kind of get on board with that so that we can help to keep our customers and people that trust us for training on the cutting edge, on the front end of what it is they need to know. So that was how I've stayed ahead, Jeff, is, looking at the trends, looking at the technologies that are interesting, and then how does it apply to our business? And I think if everybody could adopt that kind of model, I think it would not only increase your business's success, but it would increase your value to your organization. And really, that's what it's all about. The more you increase your value to the organization, the more opportunity you'll have to reach out and explore and do things.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions related to AI. I think we can answer before we move on to talk about some of the more specific, actual things people can do to stay ahead. Someone's asking in particular about, using Chat GPT. So it's a very powerful tool when it comes to teaching you cybersecurity. But I think the common question everyone has is like, how accurate is the knowledge that it provides? And how do you, know that it is a valid source of information, that what it's teaching you is the right thing and there's no, AI hallucinations or misinformation there?
So in our in skills, I can't even, let me look at the name of the course. Um, in our skills platform, I created a course called Apply Chat GPT for Science. I think that's, um, and in that course, you get to download these Wireshark packet capture files. You can then use Wireshark to go through and solve these challenges that I have in there. Like, imagine like there's these packet captures that I've created, like did attacks, put malware on, and all that kind of stuff. And then I give you those packet captures, like you download those PCAPs and you put them in Wireshark. And then I teach you how to use Chat GPT to answer the 25 questions that I have over there. Like, what IP address appears to be the attacker's IP address if this IP is the victim? So I show you how to take that packet capture, look at a scenario like that and say, all right, so he's asking me to find out what the attacker IP is. So I probably need to look at the victim IP that he's given me and say, show me all traffic between the victim and everybody else. So now you ask ChatGPT specifically, hey, ChatGPT in Wireshark, what is the command or syntax or filter to show only traffic between this IP address and this? And ChatGPT not only gives you the syntax for the filter, but it also gives you a whole explanation of context around why each part of that filter works and what each part of it does. Right. So when you look at, here's the thing about that thing about hallucinations, some of the embedding issues that you have with large language models. When it comes to things that are straightforward technical questions, you see a lot less of that type of hallucination. Where hallucinations comes in is when you have to ask it things that are heavily context based. But when you ask things like, how do I do this filter in Wireshark? There's not a lot of context around that. Either the filter is right or it's not. Right. So when you look at these types of applications, hallucinations are not as big of an issue. So I would answer that with, yeah, there's challenges with that. There's risk there, but those risks are shrinking mightily as the models innovate and the people creating the models. If you think about the iPhone and the facial recognition, remember that trend where everybody's posting TikTok and YouTube videos where they were able to get their cousins to look at their phone and they can unlock it? How long did that last? That lasted like maybe 3 months because the technology improved at such a rapid rate that that's not even really a thing, right? Look for similar things that happen with hallucination issues and stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah. Now let's move on. We had a couple slides here about, just some things that those on the call, can do, how they should go about identifying those trends. Talk a little bit more about that. One of them here is monitoring industry reports. I can maybe share some of my favorite industry reports is ISC Squared has the Great Workforce Study report that actually it's like 80 pages. Yeah, I think it's like page 54. I don't know why I got that memorized. As like all the most in demand trends from cybersecurity professionals and from cybersecurity hiring managers and Verizon DBIR. The new one just came out. That's another good one. But then the ESG Life and Times of Cybersecurity Professionals. Those are probably my three favorite reports, just for keeping an eye kind of the overall trends of cybersecurity professionals. But yeah, curious if there's anything in particular that you study. And we actually have a question about like AI as well. Someone's asking, what research articles or, what it is that you really dive into when it comes to AI. There's so many different things out there, so many like open source information. So yeah, how do you
Yeah.
identify, what industry reports and what to dive into?
So I'll be honest with you. So like obviously, so there's a few that I frequent for just industry news. One of the big ones for me is Krebs on security. Like I like his style, the way that he puts it out there. I do read dark reading quite a bit just because it's more of like a magazine type of twist on it. Some of the others, that I frequent, Exploit DB, just because I'm always looking at the latest exploits that are public and looking at how I can take those and make them into proof of concept or get somebody else to make it into proof of concept. And then the CISA website. So people sleep on the government, like, because we people always talk negatively about the government. But let me tell you, CISA.gov, the CISA website is one of the most comprehensive, complete, and accurate resources you can find for getting information about the latest threats and how they're being used and stuff like that. So definitely that one is on my favorites list of things that when I drop down in my favorites, it's in there that I go and look at probably on a daily or weekly basis. In addition to that, the the Verizon Data Breach Report is kind of like my most trusted source for data breach statistics, because as I do speeches and do presentations at conferences and things, I need to always quote different statistics around data breaches, especially when you look at like our security and awareness business. Like there's those things are reported there, phishing being one of the top reasons. So those are some of the things that I frequently look at as far as reports and things of that nature. Now, as far as keeping my technical chops sharp when it comes to cyber and AI, our skills platform, I frequent that, even though it's a product that I'm in charge of, I still use it a ton. I go in there and do micro training for myself to where I need to learn how to do a specific technique. I might not take the entire learning path, or I might not do all the labs of that learning path, but if I need to know how to do that one thing, I'll go in there and do that. And it being the way that it is in a modular architecture, it allows me to do that. I also like to use the AWS Skills Builder uh, resources, because it's like the easiest way for you to be able to go out and build out these different types of AI scenarios and use the models and do fine tuning of your own, out paying the cost that you would incur if you actually went out, setting up in your own AWS account and start playing with, because there is a risk of the challenge with having people experiment with their own AWS or Microsoft Azure accounts is you can very quickly play around with Gen AI, generate yourself quite an expensive bill if you're not careful. Using something like Skills Builder in AWS, there's no danger because you're using their own pre-configured, pre-set up environment to where you're not being charged anything for those resources. My process has always been I use that to go through and play with some scenarios before I go and build it in my own AWS or Azure environment, because I know how to do it in a way that's not going to cost money after I've done it in that skills builder training. So that is like my approach to how I keep myself up to date on the hands-on part, while also keeping a business focus on what's.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about, the importance of networking. I thought that was a great conversation earlier. We do have conferences on this slide here. So I'm curious, do you see a lot of value in going to conferences? There's a lot of, online conferences as well as in-person conferences, or there's different meetup groups, I guess is kind of also in that bucket. So, and any advice there for people looking to find places to connect with these professional networks?
I still think that this is one of the most underrated resources. Like if you look at things like RSA and Black Hat, DEF CON, and all the other different regional cons, like I think those are extremely important to, if you can, afford to go to these things, because some of the networking that happens there just won't happen anywhere else. Or I'll give you a couple of examples. We have been looking for integration partners for some of the strategy things that we want to do on the Infosec IQ side for security awareness. And we found so many great partners that fit like a glove for what we're trying to do at RSA, right? If we hadn't been there, we would not have known that those partners existed, because some of them we met in the emerging tech type of, breakout auditorium that they have, where all the new companies that have innovative ideas that they haven't really built out into businesses yet exist. Another thing that happened, I'm just thinking RSA. So the founder and the CEO of Black Girls Code, I was in the speakers lounge. This was a place that RSA has set aside for keynotes and speakers to go and like meals, have coffee, get refreshments, prep your speeches, whatever. In there, the founder and CEO of Black Girls Code came over and it's like, hey, I know who you are. Like, I followed some content. I'd like to talk with you. And we just had a great conversation. And that's going to lead to, I haven't told you this yet, Jeff, but I'm going to ask you and Casey to put together a webinar that that the founder of Black Girls Code and I do together. We're going to do a co-webinar on what their initiatives are and talk about some things that we can do at Infosec to help and just kind of get people aware of these types of initiatives that are going on. So this wouldn't have happened if I weren't putting myself in those networking positions at places like these conferences. So I definitely think it's important to engage in these. And if you can't afford like an RSA or Black Hat, go to some of the regional local cons because they're very cheap and some of them are even free. The FBI's InfraGuard, the OWASP meetups that's in your area, the ISACA meetups that are in your area. Go to these things because this is where you will meet people that may give you that next job, or they may give you that light bulb moment. They may give you some insight that clears a path for you that hasn't been illuminated yet just from a conversation. So I think it's vitally important that.
Awesome. Yeah, let's move on to the next slide then. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this, about how you have aligned your career with new trends. I saw we had a question come through. I thought was interesting too about how, the technology also moves so fast. So, we're talking about this emerging technology and how to stay ahead, but obviously a lot of that's evolving quickly as well. So, how do you balance that where you're trying to learn the things, but then those things are evolving so quickly, like what you learn now might be, different 6 months or a year down the road. Yeah, with any advice on sort of building out this plan to like identify your gaps and close them and stay ahead of all this emerging tech?
Yeah, I think you have to be very intentional about it. Then you have and approach it like a project management type thing, like it's a project. Because I started, all the way back in 2001 or so, 2002, when I first became part of InfoSec. That's what I would do is I literally had a Excel spreadsheet where I listed out, here's all the skills that I want to have. Some of them for career reasons, some personal reasons. Like I'm just really interested in this thing. And then here are the certifications or trainings that I need to get to that skill set. Right. And I would map that out in Excel and go and check them off and mark them as done as I did them and kind of help myself accountable with dates as to when I wanted to have gotten that skill by. I think if you approach it that way, it makes it more intentional and it's something that stays in front of your mind because your career trajectory and your career growth is like a plant. It's not something that you can just write down on paper and say, here's what I want to do and abandon it. You have to feed and water it just like you do it. If you come up with a career goal or you say you want to be somewhere, but you don't revisit that and you get yourself lost in the day-to-day grind of just working, you will lose progress and lose vision of where you're trying to go with your career goals. So I would say it's important to do all the things listed here, but just as importantly, with all this wrapped into making it intentional, treating it like a project and understanding that it is a living, breathing creature. You have to feed it. You have to water it. You have to reinvigorate the interest in you getting to what those career goals are. Otherwise it just dies. And a year from now, you revisit it and you maybe knocked out like a small percentage of it and you could have knocked out.
Yeah, we have a few different people asking about certification. So I was curious from your point of view, if there's you mentioned some trainings and stuff that you've taken or certifications that you put on that spreadsheet. Is there anything that's really helped your career, the most? I mean, obviously for all the people listening, there's so many different options for training and certifications for all these different roles, but just curious if anything kind of jumps to your mind for, any of those like kind of pillar moments throughout your,
Sure,
past
sure.
decade of things you learned.
Yeah. And full disclaimer here, like all of our certification partners, like I'm not picking one of you over the other. This is a personal thing about what have helped me. So this is about in no way saying that one certification is better than the other or anything like that. So I'll tell you the ones that were most pivotal for me. Um, The first one that gave me a lot of light bulb moments was the CISSP. All right. Now, keep in mind, I got my CISSP back in 2003. Initially, that was when I first got it. And the reason I say that is because most people look at CISSP as like you do your security plus and you do all these other certs leading up to that. And CISSP is like the grandparent that you assail to get to. But my approach was a little different because when I took it, I probably took it earlier than I should have in my career. But what it did is it gave me like a good view of the cyber landscape because the CISSP, you hear people describe it as a mile wide and an inch deep or some variation of that, right? And the value and the beauty of that is you get to get insights into all aspects of cyber. And what that did for me is it made it more crystal clear to me which area of cyber I wanted to focus on because I had to learn a little bit about pretty much all of them to pass that exam. But learning that little bit let me know that, like, you know what? As far as doing policy and procedure stuff, that's not my jam. Like, I would not enjoy doing that 8 hours a day. Some people would, but I figured out that like I kind of like this concept of hacking and pen testing and security engineering in that avenue. And that led me to the next certification that I got, which was CEH, because the concept of breaking in the network was really exciting, right? So I went down that route, got into offensive security, went really deep on the offensive side. And that's what I built my career and my reputation and training and social media following. All that's built mostly off of my offensive knowledge and skills. Now, over time, going back to that career trajectory and being intentional, I knew that it was going to be valuable for me to pad out and balance out my expertise with defensive stuff and with management stuff. So I made an intentional effort along that arc to always make sure I was adding defensive and management stuff to my trajectory. Whereas offensive was clearly my jam, like that was what I was most interested in. I made an intentional effort to weave in the other things so that when I got to a point in my career arc, I was solid all the way around. And that was beneficial into getting me into some of the roles and some of the areas that I've been able to get into, including the VP role that I have now at Infosec.
Yeah. Yeah, we have just two more slides to talk through. So feel free to send in any other questions you have. We have about 15 minutes left here. This slide here, I just wanted to touch on some of these emerging technologies and trends. We put AI at the top of the slide because I feel like AI kind of impacts everything. And we've talked a whole lot about AI, and then we talked about cloud and supply chain and other things as well. But, wondering if you could maybe paint a picture of, what you see kind of coming in a couple of years and whether it's how AI is going to impact stuff, or maybe it's just other technologies that people could consider diving into to stay ahead.
Yeah, so I'll kind of sum this up in a different way. So if we think about AI and machine learning, one of the challenges for us to be able to fully take advantage of that has always been um, available compute and storage resources, right? Like the average person or the average organization did not possess the financial ability to purchase the hardware that's required to really run complex and advanced machine learning models and get insights from those. You know what changed to solve that problem? Cloud. Because cloud became a thing, and now I can go into Amazon or Microsoft or Google, and I can buy myself access to a cluster of servers, whereas each server is running on 4 terabytes of RAM, not 4 gigabytes, 4 terabytes of RAM, running 240 processors. I can get myself a cluster of 100 of those and only pay for that for the hour that I needed to run this machine learning model to generate the outcomes or the insights that I need. Now I might pay 5 grand that kind of resource for that hour, but I only need it for that hour. And the beauty of cloud is I only have to pay for it when I use it. Before cloud technologies mature to what it is, that was not a capability. So what that left us with is only a select few organizations in the world could afford to even start to take advantage of something like machine learning and AI. Fast forward now to where we all have access to cloud. We all have access to generative AI because we don't have to pay for that model. We just pay for our usage. It makes it to where these things are going to morph into something that we can't even imagine to this day. Like we don't know what this is going to turn into. We're kind of, if you think about when we first learned to fly, we tried to do it by creating machines that flap wings like this, kind of like birds do. This is because we didn't understand thrust, we didn't understand lift and all these things, and we evolved and learned that. What machine learning and AI, we're at that stage. We're at that stage of where we're trying to flap our wings with AI. We haven't, there's so many things we haven't discovered that's going to be brought out by the continuing merging of AI, machine learning, and cloud resources. And really, the catalyst that's going to take it to the next level is if we took cloud and put it up here and took AI and put it here, the thing that's going to live down here in the middle that's going to change it all is quantum computing. Because once we mature in that area, the things that we're going to be able to do with cloud resources are going to be things we haven't imagined. And when we look at machine learning and generative AI and what we're doing with models and data right now, that's going to be completely dwarfed by what we're going to be doing once we get the quantum computing piece figured out and make it accessible to a wider audience. So that's the way I see it. And what I would say to people is think about all the things that I just said, and you can use that information that I just said there to kind of help you chart out the things you need to start focusing on so that you're ahead of what's coming in the future.
All right, our last slide here, talking about specific roles. Just have a few up here as examples, but um, curious, maybe kind of summing up here towards the end. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, if there's certain roles or certain areas that you feel are going to be, impacted the most by cloud and AI and quantum computing and all the stuff you're just talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So for the SOC analyst role, tying back to that, generative AI for the SOC analyst course that we have in skills, I think what's going to happen is with that role, we're not going to completely replace it AI, but I think the impact it's going to have is a SOC analyst is going to be able to go from I'm an entry level SOC analyst to I'm effective as a SOC analyst a lot quicker than they can today. So using coaching and nudging and other things that generative AI brings us, put into that role, a SOC analyst is going to morph into an effective SOC team member in record time. I mean, I'm talking about, percentages less. 1% of the time that it takes now is what it's going to take to get someone to be an effective SOC analyst going forward in the future because of generative AI. I think for pen testers, we do have a offensive security course for pen testers that focuses on using AI as pen testers. I think that's going to be in the platform within the next week or so. But that course is a good insight into what's going to happen as far as pen testing. Are pen testers going to go away? No. But some of the tedious things that we do, like constructing long nmap commands and taking all the massive amounts of data that we get back from an nmap, from a vulnerability scanner or something like that, and making sense of it, a lot of that stuff is being heavily aided or going to be heavily aided AI. So that's going to shift that role. And to be honest with you, there are products out there already that are AI driven that automate pen testing. So I think there's definitely a place in the market for those, but I don't think they're going to completely replace the pen tester role just yet. What's going to happen? Pen testers are going to, for those of you that are seasoned pen testers, you're going to need to evolve into being able to pen test some other things. The days of just pen testing networks, like that is definitely something that can be automated, at least for the most part, with the right AI patients. But being able to pen test specific applications, being able to pen test specific cloud formation types of things, being able to pen test AI models, pen testing language models, attacking those models, figuring out how to make those models do hallucinations. How do you make those models give wrong information out? How can you flood those models and bypass the guardrails that are implemented in these models? How can I make ChatGPT tell me how to do something malicious when it's got guardrails that keep me from learning how to do something malicious? That type of testing is going to surface as something that's going to be important going forward. So start to develop that skill set now, and I think you'll find it valuable 2 to 3 years. Digital forensics, a lot of this stuff has already been automated even before AI. A lot of the digital forensics skills were starting to be automated with tools like Paraben and tools like Access Data's FTK and tools like Encase. Uh, those vendors are going to lean more heavily into AI, and more of those things are going to be automated. So look out for that. Now, again, when it comes to very specific things, for example, if someone attacked an AI model and made that model give customers wrong information, how are we going to be able to prove that? How can we prove that forensically in that model? If someone breaks into your cloud infrastructure, because everybody's moving to cloud, or most folks are, if someone breaks in, hacks into a database in your cloud infrastructure, how do you do forensics in the cloud? It's very different. There's some things that you have to know how to do cloud wise that don't apply to premise or traditional networks or traditional devices. So I think that's what's going to happen. Um, and AI will be an aid in helping us to be able to evolve it.
Yeah, we have a question about another role. The cybersecurity manager, Philip's asking, what is the recommended path or training for a cybersecurity manager who has taken the CISSP certification? I would just quickly add, Brett Funder, GM, just did a presentation at the ISACA conference, and we pulled some data for that. And I know the CISM, ISACA's cybersecurity management certification, has grown something like 56% in terms of the number of enrollments for our bootcamp the past 4 years. So I know that one's really become popular for cybersecurity managers. But any advice, yeah, for cybersecurity managers looking to grow their careers and already have a CISSP?
Yeah. So let me do a counter and opposing view to CISM. So if you already have your CISM or CISSP in addition to a CISM, which those two have significant overlap with each other, some overlap. What I would say is if you were looking to make sure that you solidify your career, get some AI training, get some more technical training, go for a CEH or something like that. Even if you're not trying to become a pen tester or pen test plus or CISO plus, even if you're not trying to become a security analyst, getting yourself those certifications and getting your head more wrapped around the technical aspects of security and staying in front of it, I think that increases your network as a manager. And it definitely increases the value and the respect that people that work under you or work on your team see you with. If you understand more about what they do and how they do it, and you can demonstrate some of that, if you go take a CH, come back and do like a lunch and learn where you demonstrate an exploit so that those technical people know, like, yeah, this is my security manager, but that person still has an ear to the ground. They understand some of the technical aspects of what we do. So we're not just talking to a wall, we're talking to this person. They have enough knowledge to understand what's going on in the weeds to where we can have a good conversation. So that would be my recommendation. And I only say that whoever asked that question, I don't know your specific background or your skill set, but when I talk to and work with security managers, that is the biggest gap that I see. I don't see that they have a gap in understanding how to do security management. I see that they have the gap between understanding the technical aspects of what your teams do. That gap is growing in the security manager role. So I would say that's something that I would focus
Great. We have time just for you one or two more questions before we wrap up. We have a couple of people asking about Security Plus. No surprise, that is the most popular cybersecurity certification out there. One person says they've been kind of working in the IT field, doing IT tests for 14 years, but don't have an official IT position. Wondering if a Security Plus would improve their chances of landing that dream job into the world of IT and cybersecurity. Another person's asking, is the Security Plus enough to get into the door of cybersecurity, or do they need more certs than just that one? So Can you talk a little bit about the Security Plus and those people who are maybe looking to transition, have some IT background, but looking to, move into cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, look, Security Plus is the most popular certification in the world. Like that's just the reality of it when it comes to technology and cyber. But like it is a good start for several reasons. One, it's probably the single best source for you to get a foundational idea of what cybersecurity is all about. Also, there are many, many, many jobs out there that if you don't have that, you're automatically not considered for that job. So, yes, I think it's important that you consider it for those two reasons. Now, the third question, is it enough to get me in the door? And that really depends on the organization that's doing the hiring. I think what's happening in the industry is there is some shifting from putting all the value in certifications and some of the values now being shifted to demonstrable or verified skills. You know, you got your security plus, but can you run Wireshark? Can you find this piece of malware in a Wireshark packet catcher? Can you look at a snort log and tell me if someone's running a port scan? Like when you look at trying to get into the industry as an entry level role as something like a SOC analyst, which is one of the more popular entry level pathways, being able to go to that interview and talk about those things to the hiring manager, and more importantly, being able to demonstrate to them that you can do that, that will give you the most value ahead of everybody else that's got their security plus and done a bunch of studying and said, I'm ready for a job because I got my security plus. So I would say, yes, it is enough to get you hired if you have some demonstrable skills to go with that.
Awesome. And with that, we are out of time. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thanks, Ketron, for providing all this valuable insight. Appreciate everyone stopping by and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you all.